Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into something I'm pretty sure almost everyone listening has felt at some point. You know that feeling when you're listening to English, reading it, and you're thinking, yeah, I get this, I understand perfectly. But then it's your turn. You need to actually say something,
Right.
and suddenly you freeze up. Your mind just goes completely blank, or maybe like full-on panic mode. If any of that rings a bell, seriously, you are so not alone. It's a really, really common hurdle.
It really is. And that's exactly what this deep dive is about. We want to explore why that happens. We're going to, pull back the curtain a bit on what's actually going on inside your brain when it flips that switch from understanding to needing to speak.
Yeah.
And crucially, we'll look at some actual strategies, things you can do to finally start speaking with more confidence in, well, real conversations. Our mission really is to see how English can go from just something you passively understand to something you actively, powerfully use.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Okay, let's unpack this, because I think the first big truth we need to tackle is something maybe we don't always realize. Understanding English, it's just not the same thing as speaking it. They feel related, but they aren't identical skills.
Not at all. Think of it like music. You can listen to a piano piece, a really complex one even. You can appreciate it, understand the structure, the melody.
Right, you totally get how it sounds.
Exactly. But does that mean you just sit down and play it? Probably not, right? Unless you've practiced the playing part.
Okay, so listening is input, like taking the music in.
Precisely. Listening is input, speaking is output. And, this is key, they use, well, fundamentally different mental muscles. One's about receiving, processing, the other, generating, performing.
Okay, different mental muscles. And you mentioned research. This is where it gets really interesting for me. I saw this finding, I think it was from Cambridge University.
Yes, that study. It's
Yeah.
quite telling.
It said something like students who practiced output, like actually speaking every day, they improved their fluency something like 40% faster. Compared to students who just did listening or reading, 40%. That seems huge.
It is huge. And the study suggests it's because that active production, the act of speaking, it directly builds and strengthens the specific neural pathways needed for language generation. If you're only taking English in, those output pathways, they just don't get the same workout.
So it's like knowing all about weightlifting theory, but never actually picking up a dumbbell.
That's a perfect analogy. Your brain needs to practice retrieving words quickly, forming sentences on the fly, coordinating your mouth, all while feeling a bit of that real-time pressure. Output is the exercise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Which brings us to that awful moment, the freeze. When you know the word, but it just vanishes. What is happening in the brain right then?
Yeah, that freeze. It's very common. See, when you're just listening or reading, your brain's pretty relaxed, right? It's in receptive mode. But the second the spotlight shifts and it's your turn to speak, boom, a different system kind of kicks in. Anxiety often spikes. Your brain goes into overdrive, trying to translate word for word from your native language, searching for that perfect word, double-checking grammar rules.
Ah, the perfection trap.
Exactly. And all that cognitive load happening at once, it can just overwhelm the system and bam, freeze, nothing comes out.
So wait, it's often not because you don't have enough vocabulary.
Very often, no. It's less about the size of your vocabulary and more about the lack of speaking practice, specifically practice under a little bit of pressure.
And the fear just makes it worse, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. That fear of making mistakes, of sounding stupid,
Yeah.
it just cranks up the anxiety. It becomes this kind of performance anxiety, a mental block that stops you accessing the English you actually do know.
So if it's about pressure and fear locking things up, how do we train ourselves to, well, chill out and let the words flow?
Well, that ties into addressing a really common pattern we see. Learners do tons of input, right? They listen to English podcasts all day.
Guilty. And watch loads of Netflix, read articles.
All fantastic for understanding. But here's the thing they often miss. They just don't speak much or at all.
Yeah, the output part gets neglected.
Totally. And so you get this big imbalance. Your understanding level shoots way up. You become great at comprehending. But that speaking muscle, it stays weak because it's not getting exercise. It's like having this amazing library in your head, but the librarian who retrieves the books is really out of practice.
Okay, so we need to exercise the librarian. How do we fix that input-output imbalance? Is there like a rule of thumb?
There is actually a pretty simple but powerful guideline. Let's call it the input-output rule. For roughly every 30 minutes you spend listening or reading, try to spend at least 10 minutes actually speaking.
10 minutes of speaking for every 30 of listening? Okay, that sounds doable. But wait, if you're someone who freezes, or maybe you don't have anyone to talk to easily, What does that 10 minutes look like? Do I literally just talk to the wall?
You absolutely can.
Yeah.
Talking to yourself is surprisingly effective. Seriously. You can narrate what you're doing as you make coffee, answer questions you hear in a podcast out loud, describe your room.
Just making sounds, basically.
Exactly. Or if you want a bit more structure, maybe find an online speaking club, somewhere low pressure where everyone's in the same boat. The key is just activating the output pathways.
That reminds me of that story about Linda from Korea. It illustrates this so well.
Oh, Linda, yes.
Yeah.
I remember her case.
Her comprehension was like top-notch in class, understood everything the teacher said, all the readings.
Flawless understanding, but ask her to speak. Silence. Complete silence. You could see the frustration.
Yeah, it was like this invisible barrier. So what was the challenge you gave her?
We kept it super simple, almost deceptively so. Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes of speaking out loud every single day. No excuses, no matter how basic it felt.
2 minutes. That sounds tiny, but I bet it felt huge to her at first.
It really did. She started incredibly small, like literally describing her breakfast out loud. I am eating toast.
Wow, okay.
Then she moved on to her schedule for the day,
Yeah.
maybe how she was feeling. Very simple stuff.
And what happened?
The change was honestly pretty remarkable. Within about 3 weeks, maybe a month, her confidence just, well, it soared. She wasn't suddenly fluent or error-free. That wasn't the point. But she was talking. In class, with others, that barrier just crumbled.
That's incredible. Just from 2 minutes a day.
It highlights the core point, doesn't it? Speaking English is a skill you build, like playing the piano. It's not a test you pass or fail based on perfection.
Right. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start practicing.
Yeah.
Actively. Consistently.
Exactly. Get rid of that paralyzing fear of mistakes. It really changes everything.
Okay, so we've talked about the brain block, the input-output thing, Linda's story. Now, let's get practical. What are some actual tools people can start using, like today, to break the silence?
Great question. We've got 3 really effective ones. First up, voice diaries.
Voice diaries, like a spoken journal.
Pretty much. Just record yourself on your phone, talking for maybe 2 or 3 minutes a day about anything in your day, your thoughts, a movie you watched. It's super low pressure because nobody else has to hear it.
Yeah.
You hear your own voice using English. You track your progress. You get comfortable.
Okay, I like that. Low stakes. What's next?
Second tool, shadowing. This one's really interesting.
Shadowing. What's that?
You listen to a bit of native English audio, a podcast clip, maybe a YouTube video, and you try to repeat what they're saying as they're saying it, like an echo.
Oh, wow. In real time. That sounds tricky.
It can be at first, but you're not focusing on understanding every word. You're mimicking the rhythm, the intonation, the flow, the sounds. What's fascinating here is how it trains your mouth and your brain to actually produce the sounds and patterns of English more naturally.
Right.
It bypasses some of that overthinking.
So it connects listening directly to speaking, physically.
Precisely. It helps bridge that gap. And the third tool,
What's number 3?
chunk training. This is about learning and practicing whole phrases or expressions, not just single words.
Like common idioms or set phrases.
Exactly. Things like, let me get back to you on that, or that makes sense, or could you say that again, please? You learn these as complete units, as chunks. So when you need them in conversation, you don't have to build the sentence from scratch word by word.
You just pull out the whole like a ready-made conversational piece.
You got it. It saves mental energy and helps you sound more natural faster.
Voice diaries, shadowing, chunk training. Okay.
And used together, or even just focusing on one, these tools really help shift your brain from that passive receiving mode into an active English production mode. They lower that cognitive load, ease the pressure, and help you stop overthinking and, well, start flowing a bit more. Train the brain to connect knowing with doing.
Stop thinking and start flowing. I like that.
So maybe let's just quickly wrap up the main takeaways from this deep dive. First, remember, understanding English and speaking it, they really are 2 different skills. Need separate practice.
Right. Input isn't output.
Exactly. Second, that freezing or blanking out. It's often more about anxiety and simply not enough output practice rather than not knowing enough words.
The fear factor and the unused speaking muscle.
Yep. Which leads to the third point. Daily speaking practice is absolutely key. Even if it's short, even if it's just talking to yourself, consistency matters.
2 minutes, like Linda.
Could be. And finally, those tools we just talked about, voice diaries, shadowing, chunk training, they are genuinely powerful ways to accelerate your progress and build that speaking confidence.
That's a great summary. And I think the most important message for everyone listening is this. You probably already know way more English than you think you do. The knowledge, the vocabulary, the grammar, it's likely already in there.
That's so true. You have the ingredients.
Yeah.
Which really brings us to a final thought, maybe a question for you to mull over. How are you going to unlock that knowledge you already possess? How will you start applying it actively in your conversations, even small ones, starting today?
Yeah. Think about that. Your voice, your ideas in English, they matter. Don't let the freeze keep them locked away.